Hi, this is the introductory video for Unit 5 for School Community Relations, EDAD 6845. After last week's look at parental engagement and parental involvement, we're sort of ending our 3-unit sequence by looking at how the school engages with various levels of society, looking at society as a whole, looking at diverse communities, and then looking at parents that interact with us on a much more frequent, regular, and visible basis. Hopefully the readings and the dialogue from last week, as well as what you're finding out from your parent surveys, will help generate some good ideas for revising your school community relations plan for the final project. This week in Unit 5, we back up one higher level again and look specifically at community partnerships. So we're not looking, as we did 2 weeks ago, on diverse communities or broad global changes in society, like the breakdown of the two-parent stay-at-home mom family and increase in English language learners that are more sort of national trends. Here we're looking at how can your school best form, leverage, manage, and sustain partnerships with other organizations in your community to enhance the educational experiences, life chances of your kids. Those are going to sometimes entail social health services, sometimes they're going to parental support services, welfare agencies, etc. Sometimes they're going to be academic, either for student support or school reform support organizations. And so there's a whole host of categories of these types of external partnerships that schools ought to be thinking, but thinking pretty judiciously about, because every relationship you get into has an opportunity cost. So you're sinking resources and energy and time into building up one relationship, and therefore you're not doing it something else. And so one of the guiding questions is, how can we think about schools forming relationships that have a strong likelihood of panning out and getting some good results for our school, for our kids, for our communities. And so to that end, I've asked you to look at a few readings this week. One is my article on low-risk partnerships, which essentially categorizes community partnerships into 3 categories according to the sort of level of intensity. One are charitable support, or charitable relationships, which are essentially an external group giving things to a school. So this is charity. And the study that you see in the article I did right after Hurricane Katrina, so there was a lot of charitable relationships going on. In the article, I steer schools away from charitable relationships to be thinking more about some of the higher levels of relationships, but I think sometimes that's misunderstood to mean that we don't want to have charitable relationships. Of course not. If you have a company that's going to provide backpacks for all your kids, or going to pay for your buses for a field trip to the aquarium, if that fits into what your school is already doing, then of course that's a good thing. Schools generally, we're going to find that they're going to have a lot of charitable relationships, or at least many more than they have of these higher level technical support relationships, which focus on aspects of the educational mission that might require specific expertise that the school itself and their faculty didn't have, and school reform relationships, or feedback relationships, which are generally over a longer duration, are educationally focused. They focus on the core processes of the school, teaching, learning, assessment, curriculum, and require each group's coming to the table with the ability to critique the performance of the other, and which requires some trust between the organizations, which charitable relationships don't really necessarily require. If you're going to come and deliver fresh fruit to my kids on Friday so they can take home for the weekend, I need to trust that A, you're going to show up, and B, the food's going to be safe to eat. That's a relatively low level. Whereas if you're going to cooperate with my school over the next 5 years to improve academic achievement and outcomes for our kids, I need to know that you're going to work with my staff respectfully, that your ideas about teaching and learning are consistent with mine and effective, etc. So there's a lot of specific professional trust that needs to happen. So you'll look through my article that's on Moodle from 2010 from the School Community Journal. You'll also look at Mavis Sanders' 2001 article there, which some of you have already looked at when you were doing your current plan analysis. But here you're going to look a little more in depth at the types of relationships she looks for. And these are sort of types of organizations that schools partner with. So government agencies, health agencies, religious agencies, etc. Then, after reading those 2 readings, you're going to complete, similar to your current plan analysis, you're going to submit a community resource analysis. Essentially, that is going to be a table, and you'll see it in Moodle under course documents for Unit 5. There's a template there. You'll fill that out just like you did on your current plan analysis for all of the current external relationships with other organizations that you already have. Some of these probably already appeared in your current plan analysis, so those you can just move in to this second report, and then you're going to categorize them somewhat differently with the categories that from my article and from Mavis Sanders' article. And some of them you're going to have to probably come up with because you've thought of them since our last analysis of the current plan. One different aspect of this piece, however, is that I'd also invite you to put down potential relationships. So your current plan analysis asks you to critique what's already happening in the school. Your community resource analysis puts down current relationships, and there's a column for is this a current relationship or a potential relationship. I also want you to make sure you have a certain number of relationships at every level of both my typology and Mavis Sanders' typology. And so if you find your school coming up empty on some of those categories, I want you to go out and find something that exists in your community, put the address and the data for that organization in the left-hand column, and then rank what it might be and what you potentially might do with that organization, what they'd be best suited to do. So in that way, it's a little bit different than the one you did before. You'll send that to me by email by the end of Unit 5 as the portion of your plan. Note that there's no online discussion for Unit 5, so you just really need to focus on getting these 2 project pieces done. The first one being your community resource analysis. You're just completing the worksheet, no narrative. The second is to develop and conduct your community leader interviews. We did parent surveys in Unit 4. In Unit 5, you'll be doing the interview portion. This asks you to identify 5 to 7 community leaders in the community of your school. That means these are people who have a constituency, who have some standing, who have some following. And these are the people that, as future school leaders, you need to make sure, A, you know who they are and they know who you are, and B, you have a relationship where you can exchange information. Those are the people who are going to let you know when something's happening in the community that might impact the way you do things in your school. Good people for this are small business owners in the neighborhood and the community, local elected officials, school board, city council, these types of things, police department, executives, clergy from local congregations, any community neighborhood organizations, administrators, and executive board from those groups. If you're in a school that has a governing board, you can use them. But generally, I want you to avoid school people when you're doing this, and I want you to interview people who know something about the community, know something about the school, and would probably have some opinions on how to bring the school and the community closer together. That's the ultimate objective of your revised plan, of course. And so pick carefully between 5 and 7 people. You're going to generate a list of interview questions. You'll see in one of the readings you're looking at one of the parts of Chapter 10 in the Kowalski book that gives some advice on how to structure interview questions. I'm not going to be real nitpicky on the types of questions you ask and how perfectly you're asking your interview questions. Most important to me is that you get a little bit of face time with these community leaders. You communicate that you as a school person are interested in what they have to say about the relationship between the community and the school, and you get some real information on what they think the current status is of community relations with your school. So you'll submit a list of your questions and a summary of each interview, and then a sort of conclusion where you're looking at what you saw across interviews as some important revised plan elements that might have come out of this. And you'll start to notice we're getting to this pattern where every time you do a data collection, at the end of that you're sort of brainstorming your tentative list, your ongoing list of what are the revised community relations plan activities that I think I need to include in my final submission. So those are all due at the end of the unit. Remember, so no dialogue in week 5. You have 2 readings on community resources, community partnerships, and then you're developing and your research, your interview questions, and develop and implementing them with 5 to 7 community leaders, and then you'll just turn in a worksheet on the community analysis. You'll turn in sort of a narrative response for your worksheet for your community interviews. Also, as a note before I close here, is that you'll notice that the next week on media relations and school marketing, we are having an online week. It's 4th of July is in the middle of next week, and so be good about managing your time. Should you have any family or vacation type engagements coming up, the posts are due next Wednesday, which is the 4th of July itself, and that whole week we'll be doing an online dialogue week on Kowalski Chapter 8 and Chapter 11, and you'll also want to have access to your school crisis management plan for the week after that. And so if you're at school and you can locate that, that would be nice to do in advance before people disappear for the holidays. So that's it for this week. Email if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to respond. Bye-bye.